America loves underdog stories. That one moment when life turns upside down, when an ordinary person suddenly touches the skies of destiny. And that is exactly what happened to 35-year-old Mark Collins from Sacramento, California. Mark was a quiet, hard-working man. He worked 2 jobs, daytime at a car wash and nighttime cleaning offices. Life was never easy. He grew up in foster care, never knowing his real family. His childhood was filled with rejection, pain, and loneliness. But despite all odds, Mark never gave up. And then came the day that changed everything. Mark bought a scratch-off lottery ticket while grabbing a coffee at a gas station. Just like that, with shaky hands, he scratched the ticket, and there it was. The unbelievable, the unimaginable, $10 million. Overnight, Mark went from invisible to the most talked about man in town. News channels flooded his front yard. Reporters begged for interviews. Neighbors he never knew suddenly wanted to be his best friend. It felt like, finally, life was fair. But fate has a dark sense of humor. Just as Mark was preparing to collect his winnings, something happened, something that no one expected. To claim the full amount, Mark had to provide identification and background verification, including a DNA test required due to a legal technicality related to unclaimed inheritance linked to his biological family, something Mark never even thought about. That is when the shocking truth came out. The DNA test revealed Mark Collins was not Mark Collins. Yes, the man the world cheered for, the man they celebrated, was living a lie without even knowing it. The DNA said his entire identity, his name, his past, was false. But if he was not Mark Collins, then who was he? And most importantly, would he still get the $10 million? Or was his dream about to be snatched away once again? Stay with us, because what happened next will shake your soul. Before we dive into this unbelievable real-life mystery, make sure to subscribe to our channel where we bring you the most shocking, emotional, and jaw-dropping stories from across the United States. You will not want to miss what comes next. Welcome to our channel. Today's story is about a man whose life turned into a fairy tale, only to be shattered by a secret hidden deep within his own blood. A $10 million lottery, a shocking DNA twist, and a man fighting not just for his fortune, but for his very identity. Mark Collins' life was never simple. From the very beginning, life tested him in every possible way. While most children grow up with loving parents and warm homes, Mark's first memories were very different. He did not remember bedtime stories or birthday cakes. Instead, he remembered the cold, empty walls of foster homes and the quiet tears he cried alone at night. Mark never met his real parents. He was abandoned as a baby, left at a hospital in Sacramento, California. Nobody came looking for him. Nobody claimed him. The only thing he carried with him was a name, Mark Collins, written on a piece of paper placed beside him. For years, that was all he knew about himself. As a child, Mark was moved from one foster home to another. Some houses were kind, others were not. In some places, he slept on old mattresses. In others, he shared rooms with strangers who never cared about him. Every time he settled in, life pushed him somewhere else. It felt like he never belonged anywhere. School was no better. While other kids had parents waiting at the gates, Mark walked home alone. When others shared family vacations and happy stories, Mark stayed quiet, hiding his pain behind a fake smile. Deep down, he wished, just once, someone would call him son. But Mark was strong. Even as a little boy, he carried the weight of loneliness like a silent warrior. He learned early that the world was not fair, that life would not hand him anything. If he wanted a future, he had to fight for it himself. As Mark grew older, the struggles only got harder. At 16, he left foster care. With no family, no money, and no guidance, he found himself alone in a big, unforgiving world. He slept in shelters, worked small jobs, and did everything he could to survive. Washing cars, cleaning offices, scrubbing floors. Nothing was beneath him. All he wanted was a chance. But life never offered him more than survival. Every morning, he woke up to the same hard reality, the same small room, the same tired face staring back from the mirror. But in his heart, he never gave up hope. Somewhere deep inside, He believed one day life would change, and that belief, that quiet hope, kept him going. Even when the world turned its back, even when he felt invisible, Mark held on to the dream that maybe, just maybe, destiny had something better waiting for him. It was a cold morning in Sacramento. The sun had barely come up, and the streets were quiet. Mark Collins walked into the small gas station at the corner of his street. His eyes were tired. His clothes smelled of cleaning supplies. He had just finished his night shift at the office building. Mark had only a few dollars left in his pocket. He bought a small coffee to help him stay awake. As he waited for the cashier to hand him change, his eyes fell on the scratch-off lottery tickets sitting near the counter. He paused, just for a moment. For years, Mark had seen those tickets. He never believed in luck. Luck was for other people, people with families, good jobs, happy lives. But something inside him, a small voice, whispered, "Why not?" Mark picked up a ticket. It cost him $3. He paid for it with the little money he had left. As he stepped outside, the cold air brushed against his face. His hands were shaking, not from fear, but from exhaustion and a small, strange hope. He scratched the silver surface with his car key. The numbers appeared, one by one. At first, he did not understand. He thought maybe it was a mistake. He rubbed his eyes. His heart started to race. There it was. The prize amount was printed clearly. Bold letters. $10 million. Mark stood frozen on the sidewalk. His breath caught in his throat. His heart pounded so hard, it felt like the whole world could hear it. For a long moment, he could not move. He could not speak. Tears filled his eyes. His body shook, not from the cold, but from the wave of emotions crashing over him. Shock, fear, joy, disbelief. For a man who had nothing, this felt impossible. People walked by, cars drove past, but Mark's world had stopped. It was as if, for the first time in his life, destiny had noticed him. After years of pain, loneliness, and struggle, life had finally whispered, "Your time has come." The gas station clerk came outside, asking if he was alright. Mark could only show him the ticket. The man's eyes widened. Within minutes, the news spread like fire. Reporters arrived, cameras flashed, strangers cheered. His photo was everywhere. Newspapers, TV, social media. Overnight, Mark Collins was no longer invisible. He was famous. He was the man who turned $3 into 10 million. For the first time ever, Mark dared to believe that maybe, just maybe, life was finally fair to him. The news of Mark's lottery win spread like wildfire. Within hours, his quiet street turned into a circus. News vans parked outside his small apartment building. Reporters with bright lights and loud microphones waited at his door. They all wanted the same thing, Mark Collins' story. Mark had spent his whole life feeling invisible. Nobody cared when he walked down the street. Nobody noticed when he worked 2 jobs, barely making it through each day. But now, suddenly, everyone wanted to know him. Camera crews followed him to the grocery store. Strangers stopped him in parking lots, asking for pictures. His phone rang nonstop. Journalists from across the country called him, offering money for interviews. People smiled at him everywhere he went. Some treated him like a hero. Others looked at him with envy. But behind those smiles, Mark could feel something else. Curiosity, judgment, and greed. Neighbors he barely spoke to suddenly acted like old friends. They knocked on his door with fake concern, asking how he was, pretending they always cared. But Mark could see through their words. They did not care about him. They cared about his money. Social media made things worse. His photos, his old job details, even his childhood in foster care, everything was online within days. Some people praised him, calling him an inspiration. Others accused him of being lucky, not deserving. The attention was overwhelming. Mark, a man who had lived in the shadows all his life, now felt trapped under the bright, blinding spotlight. The peace he once had, even if it was lonely, was gone. Late at night, Mark sat in his small kitchen, staring at the lottery ticket. It was supposed to be his golden ticket to happiness, but now it felt heavy. With every passing hour, the excitement faded, replaced by fear, pressure, and the feeling that the world was watching his every move. For a man who never asked for attention, fame had arrived like a storm, and Mark could not help but wonder, was this really a blessing, or the beginning of a nightmare? After the media madness, Mark finally started the process to claim his prize. The lottery officials explained the steps: paperwork, identity checks, and background verification. Mark was ready. He had nothing to hide, or so he thought. At first, everything seemed simple. He provided his ID, his social security number, and all other documents. But then, an unexpected twist appeared. The state officials told Mark that his name, Mark Collins, was linked to an old, Unclaimed inheritance case. Years ago, the real Collins family had lost track of a child, their biological son, and never found him. The authorities now had strict rules to prevent identity fraud and legal problems. Mark's lottery prize was huge. $10 million. But the inheritance complication made things tricky. To clear it all up, the officials politely but firmly requested a DNA test. At first, Mark laughed. A DNA test? For him? He had nothing to do with the Collins family's lost heir. Or so he believed, but the law was clear. If he wanted the money, the test was required. The officials explained it gently. "It is routine, sir," they said. "With large sums like this, especially linked to old family cases, we have to confirm everything. It protects you and the state." Mark agreed, though deep inside, he felt nervous. It was not because he feared the truth, but because for the first time, someone was officially questioning his identity, the only thing he ever held onto. The next day, Mark visited the clinic. The white walls, the smell of antiseptic, the quiet hum of machines, it all felt unreal. A nurse handed him a small cotton swab. He rubbed it inside his cheek. It took only seconds, but those seconds felt heavy, filled with silent fear. Walking out of the clinic, Mark stared at the cloudy sky. All his life, he never knew where he truly came from. Now, a simple DNA test held all the answers. Answers he never asked for, but could no longer avoid. What started as a dream-come-true lottery win was slowly turning into a complicated puzzle. And deep inside, Mark could feel it. Something big was coming, and it would change everything. Days passed after Mark submitted the DNA test. At first, he tried to stay calm, but deep down, a storm was building inside him. Every time his phone rang, his heart skipped a beat. He could not sleep properly. His mind was filled with questions. What if something is wrong? Finally, the call came. Mark was asked to visit the state office. He arrived, nervous but hopeful. The building looked the same, but the atmosphere felt heavy, like the walls carried a secret. A serious-looking official handed him the DNA report. Mark's hand shook as he opened it. His eyes moved over the lines, reading, and then they stopped. The words stared back at him like a cruel joke. "No biological match found. Identity unconfirmed." Mark could not understand. His name was Mark Collins. That was all he ever knew. But this paper, this cold, scientific paper, was saying otherwise. The official spoke softly, but his words felt sharp. "Sir, according to the DNA test, you are not Mark Collins. At least, not by blood. Not legally." Mark's mouth went dry. His legs felt weak. He tried to speak, but the words refused to come out. It was as if the floor beneath him cracked open. All his life, Mark had carried that name like a shield. It was the only connection he had to this world. And now, even that was taken away from him. The room felt smaller. The walls seemed to close in. The official kept talking, legal terms, documents, next steps, but Mark could not hear them. His mind was stuck on one painful truth. He did not know who he really was. The man who won the lottery, the man the world cheered for, the man with the $10 million ticket, was living a lie without even knowing it. Tears filled Mark's eyes as he walked out of the office. The street outside was busy, cars honking, people laughing, but for Mark, everything was silent. His identity, his past, even his name, shattered in a matter of seconds. And in that moment, Mark realized his biggest fight was not for the money. It was for the truth. Mark Collins walked home that day feeling like a ghost. His body was there, but inside, everything felt empty. The name he believed was his, the name printed on his ID, was now just a lie. For the first time, Mark questioned everything. Who was he? Where did he really come from? And why? Had no one ever told him the truth? The next few days were filled with confusion and fear. Mark searched every corner of his small apartment. Old papers, foster care files, anything that could tell him who he truly was. But all he found were more questions. The foster care system had misplaced his documents years ago. The files were incomplete. His birth certificate missing. It was like he had fallen through the cracks, like he was never meant to exist. Mark visited the foster home where he had stayed as a child. Some of the staff still worked there. They remembered a quiet, lonely boy, but no one could tell him where he truly came from. His past was a mystery, even to them. With every door he knocked on, with every phone call he made, Mark's hopes slowly faded. It felt like chasing shadows. No family, no history, no answers. But Mark refused to give up. He met with a private investigator. The man listened to Mark's story and agreed to help. It would not be easy, he warned, but together they would search. The investigator dug through old hospital records, adoption databases, missing person cases. Weeks turned into months. Every new clue led to another dead end. But Mark kept going. He needed the truth, not just for the money, but for himself. Late at night, Mark sat by his window, staring at the stars. Somewhere out there was his real story, his real family, his real name. The silence of the night whispered a promise. The truth was waiting. He just had to find it. Mark had already lost his childhood, his peace, his sense of self, but he was not ready to lose the fight for his identity. This was no longer about winning the lottery. This was about finding out who he truly was before it was too late. As the truth about Mark's identity began to unfold, the legal system stepped in. What started as a joyful lottery win had now turned into a complicated courtroom battle. The state officials froze the $10 million prize until Mark's identity was confirmed. He could not touch a single dollar. The news spread fast. Reporters camped outside his apartment again. Headlines flashed everywhere. Who is Mark Collins? Mystery deepens. Mark hired a lawyer, but it was not easy. His case was unique. He was not pretending to be someone else. He had lived as Mark Collins his whole life. Yet, the DNA test said otherwise. In the eyes of the law, identity is more than just memories. It is blood, documents, and proof. And right now, Mark had none of those. The court hearings began. Mark sat in the courtroom, surrounded by strangers, lawyers, officials, reporters. Cameras flashed. Whispers filled the room. Everyone stared at him, as if he was a criminal, not a man searching for the truth. The lottery company's lawyers argued strongly. "We cannot release such a huge prize to someone with an unconfirmed identity," they said. "It is a legal risk. Until his real background is clear, the money stays with the state." Mark's lawyer fought back. "My client never lied. He grew up in foster care under this name. He earned this prize fairly. The state cannot punish him for a past he never chose." The judge listened carefully. The law was strict, but this case was different. Mark had lived as Mark Collins in good faith, but without proof of his real identity, the situation was like walking on thin ice. Outside the court, Mark faced harsh questions. Some people called him a fraud. Others believed he was just a victim of the system. But the doubt, the stress, it all weighed heavy on him. At night, Mark stared at the lottery ticket kept safely in a drawer. It had brought him fame, hope, and now, endless pain. The money was so close, yet completely out of reach. The legal battle dragged on for months. Every hearing, every document, every new headline chipped away at Mark's peace. The question remained, would he ever get the money? Or was his dream already slipping away, like everything else in his life? Mark Collins always believed that no matter how hard life got, at least he had his name. It was the one thing no one could take from him. But now, even that was gone. Every day, he woke up feeling lost. His reflection in the mirror looked the same, but inside, he was falling apart. His identity, his trust in the system, his stability, all shattered like broken glass. Simple things became painful. Filling forms, showing his ID, hearing people call him Mark, all of it felt fake now. The name that once gave him a place in this world now felt like a lie wrapped around him. The lottery money was stuck in legal battle. The media followed him like shadows. But the real fight was happening inside his heart. Mark barely ate. He could not sleep. At night, he lay awake staring at the ceiling, his mind filled with questions that had no answers. Who am I? Where do I belong? Is anything in my life real? Friends who promised support slowly disappeared. Some whispered behind his back. Others stopped calling altogether. Even the few people he trusted started to doubt him. It felt like the world was laughing at him. First, they celebrated him as a lucky winner. Now, they treated him like a fraud, a joke, a mistake. Mark's small apartment, once a safe space, now felt cold and empty. The walls, the furniture, even the lottery ticket in his drawer reminded him of everything he had lost. He avoided public places. Every time he stepped outside, people stared. Their eyes asked silent questions, some filled with pity, others with judgment. The weight of loneliness grew heavier with each passing day. Mark had lost more than his identity. He had lost his sense of belonging, his confidence, his peace. One night, sitting by the window, Mark broke down completely. The tears came suddenly, unstoppable. He cried for the lost little boy who never had a real family. He cried for the man who thought he finally caught a break. And he cried because deep down, he feared he may never find himself again. Weeks turned into months. Mark kept digging for the truth. He could not live with the emptiness anymore. The question of his real identity haunted him every single day. The private investigator worked hard. He searched hospital records, adoption files, missing person reports, everything. For a long time, They found nothing. But one morning, everything changed. The investigator called Mark with a quiet, serious voice. "We found something," he said. Mark's heart skipped a beat. Old records from a hospital in Portland, Oregon, revealed the truth. 35 years ago, a newborn baby had gone missing from that hospital. The case had never been solved. The baby's name was David Carter. DNA from that family matched Mark perfectly. Mark sat frozen as he listened to the details. He was not Mark Collins. He was David Carter, a child who had vanished, a child his real family had never stopped searching for. The investigator showed him photos, a young couple holding a newborn, tears in their eyes. They were his biological parents. For over 3 decades, they believed their baby was gone forever. Mark's heart ached. He had spent his entire life feeling unwanted, unloved, while somewhere out there, his real family had suffered in silence, longing for him. The police believed he had been taken as a baby, then placed in the foster system under the wrong name. Somehow, the truth got lost in the paperwork. It was a heartbreaking puzzle, but finally, the pieces were coming together. The news hit Mark like a storm. He felt shocked, broken, overwhelmed, but also hopeful. For the first time, the mystery of his life was no longer empty space. It had faces, names, a real story. But the emotions were complicated. Mark wanted to meet them, but he was also scared. After so many years, how do you face the people you lost? How do you accept a truth that feels like a stranger? Mark knew finding his real origins did not erase the pain, but it gave him something he never had before: answers. And in that moment, Mark understood this journey was never just about money. It was about finally discovering where he truly belonged. The final court hearing arrived. Mark walked into the courtroom with heavy steps. His mind was racing, his heart filled with fear and hope. Months of legal battles had drained him. The world now knew the truth. He was David Carter, not Mark Collins. His real family had been found. But one last question remained. Did he still deserve the $10 million lottery prize? The courtroom was packed. Reporters filled every corner. Cameras flashed. His real parents sat quietly at the back, watching with hopeful eyes. It felt like the whole world was holding its breath. The judge entered, and the room fell silent. The lawyers presented their final argument. The lottery officials argued the prize should be canceled. They said Mark was not legally the man who bought the ticket.